All right, guys. Hey there. We're back for lesson 5 in our geometry unit. And today we're talking about the surface area of cones. Hopefully you remember that from last night's or from yesterday, the other day's homework when we did surface area of cylinders. Surface area is the outside area. If I wanted to put wrapping paper on it, surface area would be what I would cover with the wrapping paper. So let's look at this one. This is talking about surface area of cones. And it says, what parts are familiar? What parts do I recognize? Well, hopefully you remember surface area. And cone, because we've already also talked about a cone. Okay? What do you think this phrase means? Well, we just talked about that. It's the outside or the covering, because if we were to cover it with wrapping paper of a cone. That's what surface area means. It's the covering. If we were to coat all of it with paint, that's how much paint we would need to cover all of the area of that cone. What makes this an important phrase for us to know, for me to know? Well, it's important because I need to be able to find that. I need to be able to solve for the surface area of a cone. And how does this fit with other words and concepts I know? Well, we've done surface area of a cylinder, and we used a lot of those same clues. So now let's look down here at the real world link. Bobby's making waffle cones. And it says, use the Pythagorean theorem to find this height right here. Okay? So if I were to draw this triangle over to the side here, it would look something like this, okay? And we are trying to solve for that height right there, this C, the hypotenuse. My A is 2 inches and my B is 6 inches. So using the Pythagorean theorem, hopefully you remember the Pythagorean theorem is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Using the Pythagorean theorem, I have an A, I have a B, and I want to see what that matches or what that makes for my C squared. Well, 2 squared is 4, 6 squared is 36, and when I add those together, I get 40. To find C then, right now that is C squared, I want to find just plain old C, so I have to take the square root of 40. Because remember, to unsquare a number, you take the square root. So I'm going to find square root on my calculator. It's right here. Okay, so the square root of 40, whoops, wrong button, is 6.32 blah, 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 blah. And it says round to the nearest tenth. So the nearest tenth is going to be that 3. I'm either going to make it 6.3 or I'm going to round up to 6.4. Because the number behind it is a 2, I'm going to leave it 6.3. So my answer down here is 6.3 inches. So now I know that this cone is going to be 6.3 inches tall. Okay? So let's do some examples with it. First of all, let's look at our equations. Here is the equation for lateral area. Remember, lateral area, in this case, is going to be outside, not the circular part, just the outside. So if I broke this cone apart, I would have the top, and then this is the part that would cover it. This is the outside portion. Okay? This is the lateral area. For the lateral area, we don't worry about this. We need the radius off of it, but we're not figuring that into lateral area. Lateral area is just this curved triangle. Okay? So the pi, we already know. R, we know, is radius. L is a new one. The cursive L is the height, the slant height, how tall that cone is. So let's do an example with one. Let's look at A. It says, find the lateral area of a cone with a radius of 4 inches and the slant height of 9.5, round to the nearest tenth. So let's write that out. To find the lateral area, remember we have to have at least 3 lines to do this. Lateral area is pi times radius times slant height. Pi doesn't change. My radius, it tells me, is 4 inches. So it's times 4 times my slant height of 9.5. My third line then is where I put it all together. I multiply it all out together. I do it at one time, so I take pi times 4 times 9.5. I can do it all together because it's all multiplication. And my answer is 119.38, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to the 10th place, so I'm going to round that 3. I'm either going to make it 119.3 or I'm going to round up to 119.4 because the number behind the 3 is an 8. I'm going to round up. So my answer is 119.4. Then I have to look at my units. My units are inches. And I'm talking about lateral area. Area is always squared. Okay? Go ahead and try a B on your own if you want to. I know most of you probably won't. You'll probably just go on and have me explain more of it, and that's fine too, as long as you get the idea of it. Down here, now we're talking about surface area. Surface area, if I looked at that same cone, this part by itself was lateral area. Surface area is this part plus this part. Okay, so surface area should be bigger than lateral area because I'm adding another piece to it. So surface area, this is like if I were to paint the whole thing, I would paint the bottom also. Or if I were to wrap the entire cone in wrapping paper, I would use surface area. Still the same thing. Here is my equation for surface area. Okay, pi times radius times height. We've already done one of those. That was how we found, this much of it is how we found our lateral area. And to that I'm adding pi r squared because that's the area of a circle. So if I think about that, I'm adding this area, which is the lateral height, to the area of the circle, which is pi r squared. Okay? So let's do an example of that. Let's look over here at C. It says find the surface area of a cone, round to the nearest tenth. So again, we're rounding to the nearest tenth, one place after the decimal. Let's write our equation first. That should always be your first step, is to write the equation. If you don't do that on your tests or on your quizzes, they will be wrong. I'm going to number the things that you have to have. You have to have your equation first, always, on every problem. And the equation is pi times radius times slant height plus the circle, which is pi r squared. Okay? So the second thing you have to do is that you have to write in the numbers that you know. The numbers that we know are pi doesn't change, so that stays the same. We're taking it times the radius, and the radius of this one is 4.5, times the slant height, how tall it is, which is 20. And to that we're adding pi times the radius squared. And again, the radius is 4.5. So 4.5 squared. This is the second thing you should have on your tests and quizzes. You have to write in the numbers that you know. If you don't write in the information that you already know, you may forget something. Okay? And the third line is where I can just go ahead and do all of the calculations together. So I'm going to do pi times 4.5. I'm doing them in order. Times 20. Be careful here because this is not a times. Make sure you put a plus in between. Pi times 4.5 squared. You can put all of that into your calculator and hit equal, and it will give you your answer. Okay? This is 346.6 or 346.36. Again, I'm either going to leave it 346.3, or I'm going to round up to 346.4 because the number behind it is a 6. I'm going to round up. So this one is 346.4. Look at your units, millimeters. Area is always squared. You have to show all of this work on your tests and quizzes or they will be wrong. I cannot stress that enough. I want to see, and Mr. Neugebauer wants to see, line 1, your formula. Line 2, plug in the information you know. Line 3, your final calculation. Super important, okay? Now let's look down here at D. Let me move my book here a second. D says, Ralph bought party hats. Woohoo, we're going to a party. They're in the shape of a cone. Each hat has a diameter. So now we're talking about, let me go ahead and draw this out. If I have a cone, I probably should have left that a dashed line, but that's okay. The diameter here is 8 inches. The slant height is 11 inches. Find the lateral area to the nearest tenth. Well, first of all, let's write our equation. First is always equation. So lateral area is pi times radius times slant height. Now I put in the information I know. That's the second step. Pi doesn't change, times the radius. 8 inches is not my radius. 8 inches is the diameter, so I have to divide that by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And the slant height, which is my cursive L, is 11. So now again, I do all of my calculations, and I put my final calculation as my third line. So I have pi times 4 times 11. So my final answer is 138.2. I either leave it 0.2 or I run up to 0.3. Because of this 3 behind it, I leave it 0.2. So my final answer is 138.2. My units is inches, and area is always squared. Okay? All right. Next, let me flip the page here real quick. See what our next part is. We don't have any more. That's all of it. It goes to guided practice if you flip the page. So that's all that there is to surface area of a cone. Remember, if you guys have any questions, please bring those into us. Write them down in the column so that you remember them. Bring those to us and let us help you out with that. And do not forget your 3 lines when you're doing your homework, especially on tests and quizzes. All right, guys, have a great night. Be safe. Talk to you tomorrow.